Hey, Chris, nice to meet you. Have we met yet?
I don't think so. No.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm glad you're here. What office are you from, or are you
I'm,
from an office?
yeah. I'm from Long Beach.
Oh, cool. Hey, I'm glad you're here.
Thanks.
So this is our little investor study group. Has someone told you already like how this works, what this group's about, and all that?
No, I just I had an opening here and they kind
Cool,
of.
man. I'm glad you dropped in. So there's this book here, Millionaire Real Estate Investor. That's kind of what we've been going through. The way I think of this group is like an investor study group. We're kind of like an investor group, but we're kind of like we don't just talk about investments. We also like methodically study, how to invest. So it's kind of like a combination between a study group and an investor group, which is why I call it an investor study group. So lately we've been trudging through this book, which is an awesome book. I highly recommend it. It's not really, it sounds like it's all about real estate investing, and it is mostly, but it's also a little bit about just how to invest in general and how to set up your personal finances and all that kind of stuff, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. I know it's Veterans Day. I know usually we get like 10 people or so, 15 people. I imagine today might be light because a lot of people are, enjoying Veterans Day, but we'll see. We'll see what we got. What's up, David? Can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, it's one of those days that I guess I don't know. I have to leave also too pretty soon. So
That's all
let's
right.
just see how far we can go.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. By the way, so Chris, there's a Facebook group that corresponds to this group. If you're interested, here I'll put it in the chat bar. You're welcome to join if you would like. If you want to just check it out, that's cool too. Whatever. But here I'll put you. Here's in the chat bar. Here's the link to it. So if you want to join, just click on there and ask to join. And then I'll sign you up. But David, so it's funny because in the Facebook we were talking about auto refis. Well, might as well just get going here. So I see you here, Chris. Here, I'll accept you, approve. Oh, check this out. We got some other people here too. I always get people asking. Some people must like just randomly come across the investor group because I get people asking me to join all the time that are. I don't want to say they're a hoax because they're not really a hoax, but just they're not in real estate. They have no connection to us. So, anyways. Okay, so somebody in the chat group, in the Facebook group, had posted about auto refi, and one of the things we've been covering lately is just the reading going up to today was all about working on your budget and saving money and all that. So I've been on a mad tear. I actually spent last weekend. I probably spent about 16 hours working on finances. I mean, I was just like sun up to sundown, Saturday and Sunday. It was one of those times when I was just like on a mad tear. I caught up, I hadn't, in Quicken and in QuickBooks, I hadn't like really reconciled all the accounts in a while, like 3 or 4 months. So I had to like catch everything up and bring everything up to date. And then once I did that, so I did the net worth spreadsheet that we've been using. So Chris, one of the things that we look talking about from the get-go is how important it is to calculate your net worth and to do it on a regular basis, ideally at least monthly. And so I did that. I entered it in for August, September, and October. And then my wife and I started going over the budget. And then we started going on a wild tear of just like, with the sword, just figuring out what the hell can we cut out. And one of the things I started looking into was refinancing one of our loans. We have a loan on, so Rebecca's got a Highlander, and on her loan, we did it like early this year in February, and we didn't get like a bad rate. We got a rate of 5% APR, but it's not like a good rate. And I was like, you know what? Let me just see if we can get a better rate. Like, why not? Like, it's free money. And lo and behold, like, yeah, there's great rate. There's way we can do much better. And it's like free, like why not? It's like free money. And so I went to LendingTree, got a whole bunch of people calling me and they gave me a bunch of numbers and all that. But then the point I'm getting to is that David, in the Facebook, you just happened to recommend Capital One, because I had gone on some websites, say, where's the best place to get a auto refi, right? And someone recommended LendingTree, which, so you go to LendingTree and then there's like 20 people who call you up with offers and stuff. And so I've been kind of like sorting through all of that. But then David, you recommend Capital One. And so I was like, well, let me just, I've been a Capital One client for like decades. Let me just see what the hell they offer. Way better than any of the other quotes. So thank you for doing that. Although they don't offer as long of a rate. So, it would be a more compressed loan, but even still, it's still a lower monthly payment. And the rate is like 3% versus the 5% I'm paying now. So
I think Chase has a longer, and they have up to 72 months, I believe.
cool. Well, that would be
Chase
even
is a
better.
little lower too. I don't know if you have checked them or not.
I will do that after the call today, because it's significantly lower than it. The lowest one I had gotten from LendingTree was 3.5-ish% somebody had offered me. So yeah, that's great.
I mean, just out of, this is the comment that I need to make is that on anything that I do, I always try to go to the horse's mouth. Even if I have tax collection, I go to IRS. I don't call anybody else, because they have the information. They give me the publication number and I can just refer to that.
Yeah.
So going there, those LendingTrees and those websites, they're technically brokers and they really need to make money. So which is okay. But if you kind of, qualify for Chase or Capital One or somebody else that's direct lender, it's probably better.
Awesome. That's such great advice. So I'm glad you shared that. So for Sharon and Hope and Dari, who just logged in, I was sharing with these guys that this past weekend, I went on a mad tear with finances, and I spent probably like 16 hours just catching up all my accounts, reconciling all that, putting everything into Quicken and all that kind of good stuff. I made sure for October, I made sure every transaction in all of our accounts, that everything had a category to it, so we could start to see, we haven't done this in a while, which is embarrassing to say, but we haven't gone over and seen like what are we spending in every category to see what can we cut out? Because that's what inspired me is what we're reading in the MREI book. It says to do that, right? So I did that. And I was looking at refinancing my auto loan, because I have a good rate, but it's not great. And I was like, man, I'm gonna save $50 a month at least for nothing. It's free money. It's like I'm just going from a bad rate to a worse rate and spending less in interest. So that's $50 a month right there for nothing. Like just for absolutely not for going through the trouble of spending 5 minutes, right? So while we're at it, so I'll tell you guys my victories for the week. And then, so Chris is new, he's dropping in to see what the hell we do in this group. So one of the things we do start off is we always talk about like, what victories does anyone have, right? So I'll talk about mine since I was on a mad tear this past week. So check this out. So that was one of the bigger ones, the auto loan, seeing that I could save at least 50. And if I want to stretch out the loan a little further, I could save even about $100 a month. And honestly, it would be not as great rate of a loan, but not really bad. And if you're going to pay like 3.5 or 4% and stretch it out, you're probably still less than the current what's the word I'm looking for, the rate of inflation right now. So you're still probably saving money, and just at these rates, why not stretch it out to infinity, right? Anyway, so there's that. So I'm going to save about somewhere between 50 and $100 a month on an auto loan. The Geico commercial, like 15 minutes can save you blah, blah, blah. So as we're sitting here cutting through all of our expenses, I was like, shit, we've been with State Farm for like 30 years or whatever, but hey, maybe it's time I just see what the hell is out there. So I go to Geico's website, I punch in my information, and sure enough, I can save about $50 a month for the exact same coverage. And I was like, wow, the commercial was actually accurate, like What were you gonna say, David? Yeah, you're on mute.
Open up. Yeah, when I was in the insurance business, and I used to do some personal lines too, and clients would call me and say, "Hey, what do you think about changing my auto?" I always used to send them to Geico first because that's who I had before. So I've been with Geico for probably 10 years now because nobody can beat them. For me,
Yeah.
so every situation is different. So
So again, so like you're saying, David, I mean, that's like, and I don't, is State Farm a better insurance company? Do they deliver as good? I don't know. I imagine they're pretty comparable. It's not like some fly by night. And the coverage limits are, I matched, I did dollar for dollar because I wanted to see how it matched up. Now, could I cut some coverage out? I don't know, but we have pretty good coverage. But it was a $50 a month savings between Rebecca and I for the two of us. So we're gonna say about somewhere between, let's call it $75 for the auto loan refi, $50 for Geico. Now I'll tell you some of the other stuff here. Okay, HBO, $15 a month there. I would keep it if anyone. I asked anybody in our family. Hey, there's 4 of us. Does anybody use HBO ever since Game of Thrones got done? And everyone's like, no. And I was like, well, let's cancel it. And if anybody misses it, we can bring it back. $15 a month. All right, here's some other fun ones. I use Calendly. I used to use Calendly for work. I don't anymore. Cut that, $11 a month. Spectrum, here's a fun one. I called Spectrum. I said, hey, my bill went from 160 to 200. I want to go back to 160. Can I do that? They said, sure. I did not drop anything. And by the way, I may call them back when I realize that I may not even need some of the freaking channels I have because I don't know that anyone watches them. But for doing nothing, I already got $35 a month. Literally for picking up the phone and saying, I want my old rate back, $35 a month there. Twilio, the thing through Command, I'm not using it. So I'm saving, I said, canceled it, save about $5 a month there. DocuSign, hey, we're all Keller Williams. I was paying for a DocuSign account long after I joined Keller Williams and got a free account. That's dumb money. So I canceled that. That's roughly $24 a month. I had this thing for hiking so I can send satellite text for when I'm out in some mountain somewhere, but I haven't done that lately. So I think I'll cancel that. And when I go climb a mountain, I'll bring it back. That's another $15 a month.
Ed, what about your health insurance with as a entrepreneurial?
So that's a great point of savings there. I personally have a great setup through my wife. So I'm covered there, but you could probably save a hell of a lot of money through there.
Which one did you use as an entrepreneur? What is your suggestion on this section?
I don't have a great answer. Does anybody else have a great answer? I don't know.
Sure. Obviously, you can go to Covered California, which is coveredca.com. Based on your income, you may qualify help with government. So what you can do is you can go there and it will ask you what zip code and how many people are in your household and what is your income. And what you need to put is your AGI from last year, adjusted gross income. So look at your tax return and see how much was your adjusted gross income from prior year. And it will tell you how much government is willing to contribute towards your plan. Once you determine that, then you can go ahead and go through the plans and find out which one is really more suitable for you. If you want high deductible, you can get high deductible. If you want to get lower deductible, you can get lower deductible. So they have different plans from multiple different companies. So you can choose from there. If you qualify for that, then you would save a lot of money. And that's where you start, coveredca.com.
Thank you. So as a realtors, you suggest that's the best option for realtors.
That's for everyone.
Everyone.
Now you need to compare that. If there's a plan, the group plan through another employer or somebody else, that may be different. But if you go on for your individual plan, that's where you start.
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we're going. So let me just show you what else I saved money on, just to show you guys like what's possible. Because I was, not to pat myself on the back too much, but I was fairly impressed with myself for having done all this. So DocuSign, I save money there. I save money on this Garmin thing that for navigation for hikers who do go like really far into the backcountry, $15 a month. I'm not using that lately. Shipped. My wife signed up for Shipped, SHIPT at the start of the pandemic because we were having groceries delivered and stuff. We're not even using it anymore. $15 a month. Bam. Evernote. There used to be this software called Evernote where and what was cool is like you could use it on your phone, on your iPad, and on your computer, and all of your little notes that you jotted down would all be synced together. Now there's some special bells and whistles, but I don't ever use, all I care about is just like some basic note capability that will sync up. It's already built into Apple. Now they have it. Like it's called Notes. There's an app called Notes, and if you use Apple, it's on your computer, it's on your phone, and it's on your iPad, and it's free. So I canceled Evernote. That's $20 a month. Mojo Dialer, I was using that sometimes for work. That's $150 a month. You don't need to worry about that. Just know that I wasn't using it. Noom, this thing for weight loss, whatever my wife had, was $19 a month. Disney Channel, how many times can you watch Hamilton? I don't know, but again, it was one of those things I was like, guys, I'm gonna cut it, and if you guys miss it, we can always bring it back. I don't care. I just don't want to pay for it if no one's using it. And then I also found out that I had to duplicate when I switched offices from Larchmont to here. My Supra box my account never got canceled up in Larchmont. And so I was getting double booked for Supra, which is stupid. But this is the kind of stuff that happens when you don't comb through your transactions every once in a while, right? So I don't know what the total is there, but it's like, I don't know, a few $100, $500, somewhere like that. I haven't added it up, but it's a lot of money. Yeah, it's actually probably close to 500, I'm guessing. All just for like just combing through my transactions and being like, well, we're going to get into because it came out of this. That's how this all happened. It came straight out of the book, and that's why I love hosting this class, is because it forces me to do the work. And so I don't know if you guys are getting much from this class, but I sure as hell am. All right, let's open up. Anybody else have any victories, financial victories for the week? Anybody want to share anything? That's a good point. Sharon says, has anyone looked into insurance through the board? I haven't recently, but I did a long time ago, and it was not very comparable. It was not very competitive, but I could be wrong. And so it's probably good for someone to check again. And if someone does that and checks into the board and finds out what insurance they have, if it's any good, post it in the Facebook group. Let us all know. Good for you, Sharon. Sharon rented out a room in her house. It's paying a lot of her rent. Bam. Anybody else? Anyone want to share anything? Financial wins for the week? By the way, because I was totally like geeking out over my own, like just how awesome it was to go through my finances. So let me ask you, like, how many of you guys have been following along? How many people track their net worth on a at least monthly basis? Anybody else doing that? From our group here? Anybody been inspired to start doing that? Or anybody working on getting to that point?
Yeah, I started doing that a couple of months ago. I started just tracking my liquid asset.
Yeah.
Because the other parts are very difficult to calculate, depends on the market values, and you need to really sit down and have a valuation on that. That's a different story. So, but if you can really follow, track your, what you have liquid and what is your cash flow, you can tell how much it goes up and down each month.
Yeah.
That way you can see if you're growing or if you're not. That's the key. That's the purpose of doing this, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to cap off my little story, the other part that happened from doing this, because this all came from the chapter that if you're following along in the book, it's all about you're not going to get rich if you don't start setting aside part of your income. Part of your to get in the game. some of this is like so, you know, logic 101, just like the most basic ideas, like, you know, do we really need to read a book to get this? But, you know, nevertheless, I wasn't doing it, which is like, hey, you can't get in the game if you're not spending less than you make, obviously, right? I mean, duh, right? And so like, it forced me, like, you know, my wife and I went through it and we're like, well, how are we doing? We were so clueless, and I'm embarrassed to say, but we had gotten kind of away from all this. We were like, okay, well, let's sit down and like, how much are we? Because we just knew our bank account seemed like it kept getting growing and growing. So we're like, oh, we must be doing good, right? So we kind of got lazy and weren't paying attention. Well, thank God we did this, because we realized like, so my wife is a high-end hairstylist. She works at this really swanky salon in Manhattan Beach. And it got shut down with COVID, right? So she lost her income, and then the kids weren't going to school. So it all kind of worked out well. We were collecting unemployment like a lot of people, like, hey, no shame, because it was legit, right? Well, lo and behold, come August of this year, a few things happened in our family. You know, the kids started going back to school, but Olivia, our daughter's she's struggling. She's not going to school every day. It's kind of weird. And Rebecca isn't, so the unemployment ended just recently, like month and a half ago, her unemployment did. And her income, she's not able to like work like she was before, because my daughter's struggling and staying home a lot. And so we're kind of caught behind the eight ball. And meanwhile, by the way, school started back up, and our kids go to this Montessori school, which is not cheap at all. And lo and behold, like, we're losing money each month, and it's not a small amount. It was like legit. And we weren't even aware of this. And so thank God we did this, because we were like, oh shit, we better like get our act together. Because like, first of all, we want to have money for investing, and that's what we're doing here. But also, if nothing else, I certainly don't want to be losing money, not at the rate we're doing it. So, you know, it forced us to like look at some stuff, and we're still working on that. But you know, that's what happens. This is the kind of stuff that happens from keeping track of your net worth and going through your budget and doing that, right? So big win for me for the week, even though it was bad news that I've still got to figure out a solution for. The good news is that I learned this with plenty of, you know, I'm not in any sort of financial trouble where I can make adjustments. You know, thank God I didn't realize this 4 months from now. And then, you know, when we're like suddenly running out of money kind of thing. So there you go. There's enough about me. Anybody else want to share lessons learned, anything, victories? Otherwise, we'll jump into the book.
Has any of you read the book, The Richest Man in Babylon? That's the basic book. It was written in 1926. And I think it's a very short read. It's not really a long one. It's very thin. And I think it talks about all this basics of saving money and how to really manage your financials. It's an old book. When you talk about the old book, it's all about principles. So I strongly suggest, you know, if you can pick up a copy and just read that. It's a very short read.
I just found it on Amazon. Here you go. I'm going to order one today. I'm always looking for cool books to read, especially about finances. After I read the MREI book with you guys, I will read that one. All right, this is awesome stuff. Okay, anybody else? Anybody else want to share anything? Okay, cool. So let's go ahead, Ray. Go. Ray.
Sorry, I just jumped on because I had some headshots done over here in the office.
Cool.
Had to make sure that my hair was in place, if you know what I mean. Anyways, another book as a short read is the Greatest Salesman in the World.
Og Mandino.
Og Mandino, yeah, it's a really good one too. So
I love that one too.
That's part of my collection. So.
And if my other favorite one of all time is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That book changed my life and has many people I know. So we got some great ones there, suggestions for everybody. You know what we should do? At some point, we should come up with a suggested reading list, and we'll put it in the Facebook group for anybody who's interested in, for our group. All right. So anybody else? I think before we dive back into the MREI book where we've been reading.
Ed, you're talking about books that they are sales-wise or any book?
We're talking about books that are all about wealth building, books that changed how you think about wealth building, money, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, money. Okay.
I
Can I
have a
suggest a
full
book that
library of
I
that.
think, can I suggest a book that I think will help everybody?
Sure.
That I think it's not, but it's a great book. And I know that few of you maybe know the Outliers book, The Outliers. Have you heard about that book?
Not me. Anybody else? Outliers?
Yes, I've read that before.
Yeah, it's a great book. So briefly, what it means is there's certain people so successful in history, like Elon Musk or all these people that are billionaires. And what the book explains is somehow you go to that level for a reason that this guy discovers is what day you were born, what month you were born. And it comes to a thing of understanding where you're coming from and the opportunities that you have and versus another people who don't have any opportunities. So, but it's a great book in not just in that way, but also tells you that if you want to really be good, and this is about selling or making business. Also, it says in another chapter that you need 10,000 hours to work in that thing. Let's say sale, or it can be teacher, anything. If that is the moment that your brain understands repetition and you are an expert. It's after 10,000 hours. So it's a great book that I still recommend to anybody that is in this call. Even we are focused on wealth, but it changed my point of view of so many things. And I think to Ray, I recommend that book a week ago. So maybe David, you can say something different. You, David, read the book?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you said, it talks about how to become a master, and it takes 10,000 hours of doing the same thing. The example is like Beatles, and that was the example that they used, and also what they talk about is like it depends on what era and what's going on around you. That's really makes you gotta be able to find that opportunity in order to become successful. Yeah,
exactly. So I don't want to get out of topic, but I would just want to recommend that book. I think everybody has to read. It make a change, at least in me. So that's what I want to recommend the book.
Cool.
thank you so much.
Thanks, Luis. All right. Speaking of books, let's get back to our book, the one that we're going through right now, and maybe we'll hit one of these other books down the road that you guys have suggested. So we're on page like 131-ish, 130-ish, right? So let's talk about what we read, because it's funny. It's so freaking kindergarten, and yet it had such an impact on me because what's that saying, right? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? I kind of had, give me 1 second here. I'm just changing my blind so that the sun doesn't shine in my face here. There we go. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I kind of felt like that with this book this week, where it was like, I was ready to finally hear something that, I'm sure I've heard a million times in my life. But here, let's jump into this because it had a big impact on me talking about books that change us. Okay, so on page 130, he's talking about, we're talking about the path of money, right? And as we get to the end here on page 131, he talks about, millionaires know that active lending, in which they lend their money directly to businesses or individuals, can bring them higher rates of return than passive lending. However, it will require them to be able to lend significant amounts of capital, and that they will typically not get the benefit of appreciation. That this is good for institutions and mature individual investors. Those are the ones who are good at active lending. That's when you like sell or finance a house, that kind of stuff. Then he talks about asset ownership is on the other side of the path, and this is where big wealth is built. Millionaires know this and place most of their investment dollars here, buying and owning assets that can appreciate and give them cash flow. But when it comes to ownership, they know that the passive options stocks, real estate investment trusts usually don't build great wealth without insider positioning or great wealth having been invested. As a result, they usually head straight for active investing in business or real estate. Millionaire real estate investors choose real estate. Why? Because they like the big upside, the small downside, and the personal control it offers. It kind of reminds me of what David was saying about when you're looking to refi, like you can go through a broker or go straight to the bank, right? It's kind of the similar thing with investing. Sure, if you have giant globs of capital, you can invest in the stock market, you can invest in REITs and that kind of thing. But if you're smaller fish, you're probably going to be better served by buying directly the asset itself, like directly investing in real estate and that kind of thing. Assuming that you know what you're doing, which is what we're doing, learning how to know what we're doing. Okay, now we go to budget your expenses. This is the part that rocked my world this week. It says, so this is like towards the bottom of 131. Because they have an undisciplined approach to spending, most people usually have more month left at the end of their money. This is a problem. People can't progress along the path if they spend all their income. To achieve your financial goals, you have to have some money left over at the end of the month. That's the only way to get off the starting line and start investing. Like you must spend less than you make. Duh, right? He goes on a couple of examples, and then down at the bottom he says, we still live in a consuming society, unrestrained and unbudgeted. He talks about how much credit card debt people have in America. It's crazy. Unlike the days of Veblen, we don't even have the cash. You don't even need to have cash to spend it. Credit comes easy. And increasingly, people are willing to mortgage their financial future for the trappings of the rich today. I love this quote. And this quote is said many times throughout this book. And I also hear Gary and Jay talk, Gary Keller, Jay Papasan mention this from time to time. If you have to finance your lifestyle, you can't afford it. Like if you have to finance your house, that's one thing. But if you have to finance buying the coolest new Apple Watch, if you have to finance the luxury car or the whatever more than you can afford, if you're doing it on a credit card, then you can't afford it. You're just kidding yourself thinking you can't afford it, is what I guess that implies. Anybody else want what their take on that quote is? If you have to finance your lifestyle, you can't afford it. I will proceed. So he's talking about millionaire investors. They successfully and consistently keep their focus on their financial future. And then he goes on, personal budgeting works. I do it. The millionaire real estate investors we interviewed for this book do it, and you must do it. It is the only way wealth building gets launched and maintained. So far, two habits he's made very clear in this book. You must track your net worth. Don't just do it. The first time you do it, takes a boatload of work, but it gets easier every time, especially if you just maintain it and do it once a month, or even better, once a week. It's actually, first of all, if you do it if you keep track of all of your assets in something like Quicken, literally you open up Quicken and it's right there. It tells you what your net worth is today. For most people, if you don't have exotic, if you have some basic investments, right? But so that was number one, track your net worth. Number two is have a budget and track it. Know where your money is going into what categories. And he goes, that's what today's going to be all about. Your ability to budget successfully is directly related to your ability to differentiate between discretionary spending and required spending. It's the priceless ability to distinguish between wants and needs. They are not the same. Investors can separate the two. There is no confusion. The required spending reflects their actual needs. Consumers don't have this financial clarity. Their required spending reflects both their wants and their needs. The net result is that investors have money to invest and consumers don't, right? We're talking about the difference between investors and consumers, and we're all wanting to be investors, right? Consumers, he goes on and he just beats this like a dead horse throughout this chapter, but let's go through it. Consumers look at their monthly expenses and immediately come to the conclusion that they can't afford to invest. After all, by the time they've paid for their, quote, necessities, there doesn't seem to be anything left over for investing. Consumers often complain that they never have enough income to cover their needs when really it's their spending, not their income, that's the problem. This is just brutal, this part here. In our experience, the number one barrier to investing in real estate is a perceived lack of investment capital rather than a real one. Let that one sink in, because if you're somebody who's thinking like, oh, I don't have enough capital, that is quite likely a limiting belief and not an actual thing that is happening. Investors, by contrast, see it as it really is. They take an honest look at their expenses and separate the discretionary from the required. Investors know that their daily, weekly, and monthly spending decisions can add up to a lot, and they are willing to make small sacrifices today in exchange for big rewards down the road. In the end, investors see investment spending as required spending. That's why they always have money to invest. Investors want to invest and take every opportunity to set aside the money to do so. This is where the phrase "pay yourself first" comes from. They take investing so seriously that they start setting aside investment funds the moment money comes into their possession. Millionaire real estate investors take this concept a step further. They pay themselves first, second, and last. They set aside money to invest before taxes, after taxes, and after all spending. Millionaires play a game to see how much money can they save for investing everywhere they can. Sacrifice can be fun when you connect it to a reward. That's a pretty powerful statement too, right? So that you see those graphs, right, on page 134, 135, 36, 37. It's talking about, there's this one here, how consumers, well, you can't see it, it doesn't work. How consumers see their budget, which is like, they think everything is like required spending, and they think only like a couple things at the bottom is discretionary. But if you really look at it, and I'm not saying, this is what my wife and I decided, and we haven't finished this yet. We started it this past weekend, but now that we have everything in our budgets, we're going to actually go through and say like, what actually could be cut? Not that we're going to, but just like, we always say like, oh, we could never cut that. But really, like, I mean, could you? Like, we always said, oh, well, we're never going to take our kids out of Montessori school. And now we're like, I don't know. Like, we might just be yanking them out, right? There's no, when you really look at it, your required spending is actually a lot less than for my experience that I'm having as we speak is that my required spending is much, much less than what I used to think is my required spending. And there's actually a lot of things that I could give up. I'm not saying I have to, we're going to figure that out, but let's be clear that there are things that I could cut out if I wanted to be tight for a while so that I could get ahead and have some investing money, right? Is this hitting anybody else the way it's hitting me? Anybody else? Is this landing on anybody?
I mean, I haven't read the book yet, but it sounds pretty similar to Peter Thiel's book 0 to 1 about startups, and that's a really interesting kind of book because he talks about in a section the idea of certainty and uncertainty and optimism and pessimism. And I think a lot of people, because they're very pessimistic and unsure about the future, they're willing to kind of take on the debt now and not think about creating wealth over a longer period of time, because that longer period of time for them is uncertain. I mean, it's uncertain for everyone, but it's especially uncertain if you think that things are just going to get worse over time. So I just thought that was kind of linked to that.
That's awesome. By the way, I forgot to mention one last thing from my experience this past weekend. One thing we did, which was super, super cool, is we opened up investment accounts for both of our kids and put some money in for both of them in a index fund for the S&P 500. And we also took, some money from our own that we just had sideline money and opened up we had an investment account, but there was kind of like, there wasn't really anything in it. So we funded that a little bit. It's not a lot, but it was just, and it was more like psychological than anything of just like, let's just get off the starting line. My wife and I, we used to have quite a bit of money invested. We used to own a few houses. And then we got hit financially pretty hard by some medical expenses, like 8 years ago now, something like that. And it just crushed us, partly due to our own not planning like we should have. And we just have never felt like able to get back in the game. And I was like, you know what, even if it just means dipping our toe in the water a little bit, let's just have something so that we feel like we've started heading down that path. Because I'm tired of just living, just getting, not saving away for investing again. Like, even though we have kids now, it's a lot harder. It's not impossible. Like we can do this. So there you go. I'll get off my soapbox now, but that's.
Ed, one of the best techniques that I used started using many years ago, it was like automatic investing. Because if you have to do that manually every month, you second guess yourself, and you don't want that. You want to make sure that it just happens automatically, and you don't second guess yourself and say, okay, can I afford this month or not? The answer is always yes, if you do it automatic.
I love that. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take your advice and I'm going to automatically invest, even if it's just a little bit right now.
Whatever it is, smallest amount. It doesn't matter what it is.
I love it, David. I'm going to do some for each one of my kids and also for our little investment account. And we're just going to start there. And at least we know we're putting away something each month. And then it's just up to us to make sure we don't overspend and do that. Love it.
Ed, I got a question for you. The plan that you have for your kids, is it the 529 plan?
So we didn't actually. I take it back. We set up the accounts like months ago, but we hadn't funded them. But I remember they were. Let's look.
Yeah.
It's with TD Ameritrade.
Yeah.
Which apparently I found out that this is getting bought out by Schwab.
Yeah, there is always acquisitions with those financial institutions. Yeah, ours is with Fidelity, and we have the 529 plan that we started years ago. However, I have not contributed, or my wife has contributed within the last few years. So needless to say, let's just hope, cross our fingers that they get into college, right? It's a joke.
Hold on.
No, we know what we need to put in, actually.
Well, if you really want to think about this, I always have my opinion on everything, I guess.
Yeah, no problem.
No, yes, awesome. David, you're such a valuable part of this group. I so love.
I appreciate that. You saying that. I honestly think that we overthink all this stuff here, and we are sold on some ideas that some institutions benefiting from it. You have to ask who's benefiting from it. Education funds, there are so many resources within this country that kids can get educated. And there are scholarships, there are loans, there are stuff like that they can get. As a financial advisor, what we used to say is that you need to maximize your own retirement first. Once you maximize that, it's not a good idea to fund the education fund and not fund the retirement. The first thing first is retirement, because that's your money that nobody else is going to come and say, hey, this is some extra fund that you can get, because the kids may or may not be able to support you when you are retired. So that's the first thing you do. And if you have extra money, I'm for the tax advantages plan, as long as it's only maximized and is earmarked for certain things. 529 plan, we did it ourselves. I'm talking from experience, and found out later that, probably wasn't a good idea.
Was or was not? Sorry,
was not a good idea.
Was not. Okay, why?
Because it grows tax deferred, and then you can just take it out as you pay the education, and sometimes the money just sits there. If you really truly use when you're choosing your fund, because you're limited to certain type of investing within the 529.
Yeah.
And if you really choose a fund that doesn't have that much of a turnover ratio, if it's less than 4% turnover ratio, you don't have that much of a taxable event throughout the year. So that doesn't really matter. You can just keep growing it, technically tax deferred, because there's no There's no taxable event. There's little limited taxable event. So these are the things that's my opinion. Again, that's what I think. So it doesn't mean that goes for everybody. Everybody's situation is different. Nobody's situation is all the same.
Div, is there an alternative of a fund, a vehicle for the kids? Do you recommend maybe another type of educational fund?
No,
Than the 529?
education fund is just a fund, but 529, it grows tax deferred. Those were really created for grandparents that they want to put a large amount of money and they could gift it to that. That was really created for that, that grandparents can gift large amount of money in 1 year and treat it as a gift without any taxes. Again, there are so many different options, but 529, it's a good one, but it's not for everybody.
Okay.
This is my opinion, again.
So I'm looking here, because I called them and I said, hey, what should I get for I want to open up an account for my kids. I just want to put money in there and I just want to invest it. And I just don't want them to be able to touch it until they're, at least 18 or whatever. And so they gave me a UTMA account. I'm not sure exactly.
OTMA account.
What's that?
OTMA account. It's a Uniform Act that they use for children. They, it's like a gift that you give to your children. You can't touch it. It's not your money anymore. It's their money. Once they become 18, you can transfer it to them. That's like just a regular account. It's not 529 or it's not anything like that. Yeah.
I figured that, that's a great place to start. I mean,
yes,
any place is a great place to start.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Any place and I think
David, is there tax benefits with that? What Ed did with his, or tax advantages?
Yeah, for kids, because those accounts, they become kiddie taxable, so it's lower tax.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little bit of tax advantage, but not really. Tax advantage is really great, but it all depends. In financial world, everything depends.
What's that? No, I'm the boss.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So this was good stuff. By the way, I've been trying to get us to analyze one investment property every week. So we may not have time to do that today, but I got to say, I hopefully you're getting as much out of this as I am. I'm soaking all this stuff up. And just David, the advice of just setting up an automatic investing, system so that some money gets automatically deposited in these accounts every month. It's worth the price of admission right there. I mean, I know none of this stuff is like rocket science where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I've never heard that before. What I'm finding in me is that, look, first of all, I've invested in a lot of real estate over my life, but I kind of got out of the game. And it's not, I keep confusing knowledge versus the actions of just doing it all, right? And I feel like now I'm kind of developing good habits, which is far more important than developing some rare knowledge that is like, some very immense investment knowledge that's like some, you don't need to be a wizard at this. You just need to be good at it, and you just need to do it, right? Is what we're saying here. So we'll get back to analyzing investments next week. Any other comments? Someone earlier this week had asked me, like, what's a good in the Facebook group? Someone was asking me what's a good S&P 500 index fund to go with, and really it's all about just finding one that has the least amount of fees. Because I mean, if theoretically any S&P 500 index fund they're all the same. They just mirror the S&P 500. So there is no need to have a manager watching over it and picking things. I know there's probably better vehicles out there, but I always know I've been told, like, hey, if you don't know what to do, start there. You're already going to be better than half the investors out there if you just do that and don't do things like margin or anything like that. If you just do that, you may not have the best investment out there, but you're certainly good and you're in the game. Would you agree with that, David? You probably know more than I do about that.
Yeah, the S&P 500 index funds that comes in two ways. You got to really know which one it is. One is active and one is really non-active. Some of them, they just invest into S&P 500 index and they just don't do any trading. Some do actively trade back and forth depending on, but they are investing into S&P stocks. The other thing is that you need to really look at, if it's not a tax advantage plan, you need to look at the turnover ratio and the expenses. Right now, Fidelity has one, it's called zero expenses. There are 4 or 5 funds that they have zero expenses. That's what I personally use, and they have very low ratio, turnover ratio.
That's exactly the one so this article I just put in there is from Bankrate. It talks about what are the best index funds. And some of them, by the way, are mutual funds and some of them are ETFs. There is some tax differentiating between the two. With where I'm at right now, I'm not too worried about that. I will when I start to have a little bit more invested, I'll probably figure that out a little better. Yeah, that Schwab, the Fidelity fund that David mentioned was number 1 on their list for the one most recommended. I mean, literally their expense ratio is 0. That means that for every 10,000 you invested would cost you 0 annually. There's literally 0 expense to it, which is hence the name 0. So there you go. And by the way, they call it in case you're wondering, this is some information that comes from this article. It says, it's not called a S&P 500 index fund because that allows them to not have to pay a licensing fee to use the S&P name, which means it allows it to be 0. So if it was called an S&P 500 index fund, it wouldn't be 0 anymore. So there you go. So anyways, this was a little bit off. We kind of wandered a little bit on topics today that I thought was pretty awesome. So hopefully you did too. We're going to kind of wrap it up there. Next week, we'll get back into analyzing some more properties as we are prone to do. I encourage you all, let's see if we can do this. Let's see how many people take me up on this. But I suggest that all of you take the form that we've been using to analyze investments and do one property between here and next Thursday. Just analyze one property and then bring it back to us and let's go through what you came up with together, and we'll see if it's a good investment or not. Sound like a good plan?
Great idea.
Ed, I want to tell you one last thing.
Please do.
If you take your kids out of Montessori, you and your wife are going to be instant millionaires. I'm just letting you know. Okay. My boys, we took them to Montessori to Manhattan Beach on Peck Avenue, and it cost us an arm and a leg. But I mean, the trade-off was we were very happy with the Montessori education.
Yeah.
But it's highway robbery.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Hey, look, I believe it's a better, lots of people have different beliefs. This is I'm with you. My personal opinion is that it is a better education, but it's also costing us $30,000 a year, which we don't have right now.
It's crazy. I know.
And, maybe at some point we'll have that kind of fund again where we can drop that kind of dough and not feel it. But right now, we'll put them someplace free, and I'll give them some tutoring, and instead of, we're doing things like educating them on I literally walked my son for about 2 hours on what exactly is an S&P 500 index fund and how this works. And I was thinking, damn, that's probably better than whatever he's learning this week in Montessori school. I can promise you that. I wish I had gotten that kind of education when I was younger. So, all right, we'll wrap it up here.
I guess a suggestion for you.
Yeah.
Why don't you put that $30,000 to education fund, and you can send them to USC, and you can forget about the elementary and it doesn't matter what the school is, but when you go to college, you have a lot of money that you can spend on good school, because that's where it's important.
Yeah.
Good college.
David, at USC, one book costs $30,000. What are you talking about?
I know. Yeah. I know that.
Anyway. You guys are the best. That's why Thursdays are my favorite.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I love this group. I love this group. Sometimes I'm surprised that we don't have like 100 people on this call. And then sometimes I think that, like, you know what, I'm kind of glad that it is kind of small because we get to go deep into subjects and stuff that if we had a ton of people, we wouldn't be able to do, right? So anyways, good to see you guys as always. Chris, I hope you come back. I hope you guys liked it. If not, totally cool, whatever. I'll see you guys back same time next week. And Sharon, it's good to see you as well, even though you were but you're renting out a room in your house and you're taking that money and that's investing money. See that's being creative to invest more. So there you go. Good to see you guys. We'll be back on Thursday, same time next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Great, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.